So, feel good?
My hands are a little sweaty, but...
It's all good now, too. This is Equipping Grace. On today's episode, Pastor Ben sits down with Carrie Triumbuck and Katrina Nunez to talk about the upcoming leadership transition within Grace Kids, our nursery through elementary school program here at Grace Church. So, we want to talk this morning about kids ministry and about the transition that is coming up with that. Before we dive into sort of what's coming, I wanted to give you guys an opportunity to share, kind of introduce yourselves and just explain real briefly your connection to Grace Church.
Mm-hmm. Well, my name is Carrie Triumbuck. I have been on staff here at Grace Church for 3 years, I believe, as our children's director. I started attending Grace Church when I was in GCBI in 2013, 2014, and really enjoyed my time here. I volunteered in the nursery when I was here, but I was only here for the GCBI window, and then I returned to do some ministry in the Philippines where my family does ministry. And then after a year there, I came back. And towards the halfway point of my second year here in Sebring, attending Grace Church and volunteering, I was asked to take a little bit of a bigger role in the kids ministry in assisting the children's director at the time,
awesome.
Giving her some breaks and doing some of the leadership things on Sunday mornings. And so it was a very natural transition for me to be the one to step into that role. GCBI had finished, and I decided to end my time as an RA and to transition into leading in the kids ministry.
Right.
And so that's when that started three and a half years ago. It's obviously a lot of leadership with the ministry team itself. So we have a ministry team of about 20 plus volunteers who serve on some a weekly basis, some twice a month, some once a month. And so a lot of what I do is organizing behind the scenes with them, planning lessons, supplying crafts, snacks, whatever it is that we need for a Sunday morning, making sure they have everything that they need to do their ministry well. A lot of what I try to focus on a Sunday morning is getting some face-to-face conversations with parents. But it's a lot of organization, it's a lot of planning, and just sort of directing the vision and the ideas and the heart behind what we're doing on a Sunday morning, giving the staff or the volunteer staff a person to ask questions to and to get guidance from.
So Katrina, can you do the same? Can you kind of just run us through, give us the Katrina story as it relates to Grace Church of Sebring, up until this point?
Up until this point, yes. I'm Katrina Nunez. I also attended GCBI, and I was in Carrie's class, and that brought me to Sebring first. And after this, I went to live in Nicaragua, and I was with Tamanu Dikio, and after that, I stayed there for 2 years. I went back home to Indiana, and then I missed the sunshine. I really love being in the warm weather, and I knew that if I came back to Sebring that I would have a community and a family, which I do have here. And so I think of Sebring as my home now, and I think of Sebring Grace as my home church. And currently I am also an RA with GCBI.
That's awesome. It's kind of creepy how similar y'all's stories
Weird.
are.
Super weird.
GCBI, the mission field,
RA.
RA. Anyway.
I'm going to get you to do Mary
It's
Kay
interesting.
Next, we'll
Yeah. Yeah, so what else? You came to Sebring, and a big part of your decision to move back to Sebring was the church. But what do you do now, in your day-to-day life, other than your position at GCBI?
Yeah, so I'm also a consultant with Mary Kay, and then right now I work at Ruby Tuesday just as a way to make money.
That's awesome. So, Carrie, can you update everybody on where you are at, you and Rob as a family are at, and what that means for your role at Grace Church?
Yeah. So I think probably a lot of people who know me know that 3.5 years ago when I started at Grace Kids, I was a single 20-something living in Sebring like many of us have been at one point. And in those 3.5 years, the Lord introduced me to a godly man and led us down the path of making a lifelong commitment to marriage. And so that comes with a lot of life change. And we prayerfully considered what that should mean for us moving forward when it came to ministry. We were both really passionate about living a ministry-minded life, whether that meant that we would find full-time positions working as ministry coordinators or working as him as a pastor, me as a pastor's wife. And we just really knew that the Lord was calling us to that. Along with working at Grace Kids, I also work at our church's daycare center that we started in 2005, Kid City. And that is where most of my ministry gospel energy gets poured into.
Yeah.
And so knowing that moving forward, we wanted to have a family. I want to be as much a stay-at-home mom as I can. I just knew that there wasn't space for both things. There was not space for me to work at Grace Church in the kids ministry team and to be part of the Kid City team and to be a mother and to be a wife. And so we considered a lot of options for ourselves and for what God would maybe be calling us to, and really felt confident that step one was to remove myself from the staff team at Grace Church, allowing me to take more of a helpmeet role as Rob pursues a full-time ministry lifestyle. Instead of it being him supporting me as I'm the children instructor, it would transition to me supporting him in whatever God calls him to. And so we made this decision not long after we got married, but wanted to make sure that whatever it is that we did well. And so right after the Easter event this year, we sat down with Pastor Matt and let him know that we were considering and choosing to step down from Grace Kids.
Yeah.
But we wanted to make it a long transition time. We didn't want it to be something that we just sort of made a decision and walked away and left a lot of things hanging. And so since April, we've been working towards this transition, praying over who the Lord would bring into it and making decisions about what needs to change in order for this transition to happen smoothly. And so that's what brought us to this point.
I think that's awesome, and it's been neat to walk through with you as your brother and also ministry partner to kind of see how God has moved you and Rob in a direction that I think everybody can agree is a godly one, right? For you to say, this was my role when it was just me, but we're now two become one, and it's not that you've got to give everything up because now you're a wife, but you actually are saying, hey, I want to take this on as a team. And sometimes when we get into a marriage or we get into a new relationship, it requires us to look at things that we're kind of set in stone for a long time and say, does this fit? It's kind of that new wineskins idea that Jesus talks about. And so I think it's really brave what you've done to say, I need to step away from this thing that was important to me and is important to me, but it's because God's calling us to something that's different and something that's new. And that's just a difficult decision to make. And so I think it's really cool. And I'm proud of you for making it happen. And because it's easy just to get settled in ministry. This is what I do. How have you been a part of the transition conversation? So we kind of brought everybody up to speed as to why you've made the determination that you need to part ways with this position of leadership. But one of our big core values, I guess you could call it, at Grace is that we want to be replacing ourselves, and we don't want to just treat ministry like a job. It's more than that. We need to be helping to develop whoever comes behind us. Mm-hmm. So how have you been a part of that, and how does Katrina fit into all of that? And I'll let her speak to that as well, obviously. But
well, that's been the trickiest part. The honest truth of that is that is a very hard thing. So it took a lot of faith to not know what the Lord had next in our ministry and who He had next in our ministry. And funny enough, Katrina and I have been friends since GCBI 2013, and it wasn't, it definitely wasn't one of those things where, I was like, oh, well, I'm just going to hire my friend. It wasn't, she wasn't on my mind when we spoke to Pastor Matt in April. It was just not something that had ever occurred to me as a fit. But God really opened a lot of doors over the last couple months to prepare her heart and to get her to a point where she could.
So Katrina, when Carrie comes up to you and explains, sits down and it kind of explains her heart, and some of this was probably, just the two of you hanging out, because I know that you do that. Mm-hmm. You're actually friends, which is cool, and that's part of the fun thing about, the thing I enjoy about, probably most about being on staff and being a part of the church here, is we get to do this work with people we like, mm-hmm. and with friends. But what was sort of your initial reaction, and how did God lead you? Kind of explain that process, because I know we talked, since you moved here, and when you moved here, this was not on the radar.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
I had no idea what I was getting myself into when I moved here. I actually was just planning on being here for the winter, and then just something after something after something made me want to stay, and now I don't really have any plans on leaving anytime soon. So the transition, I would say, I don't know if it was end of last year or early this year, where I just went to Carrie's like, hey, I'd love to help out with it. I felt like I should be helping and teaching. I enjoy teaching, and I've done it before when I was in Nicaragua with teaching kids Bible. So it started off with that, and I started doing that pretty slowly, but got plugged in. And then when I went to Nicaragua in August, I spent some more time with the kids that I had taught while I was over there, and we did a program for them one afternoon, and I was teaching, and I was like, I missed this.
Yeah.
So I had just, when I got back from that, I was just hanging out with Carrie, eating ice cream, super important. And I was hearing her heart, and I could tell that she was, overwhelmed with what she was doing. But I also just wanted to offer that I wanted to be involved more. And at that time, I thought that just meant, like, I want to teach more often than I was at the time. And in the back of my mind, probably it was there of like, maybe I could do that, but I didn't want to. I didn't want to be in her position. But I thought about it for a couple weeks, or maybe even just a week. And then later you came up to me after church one day and you're like, I have a question for you. And I knew what you were going to ask me. Yeah. And I told you jokingly, I know what you're going to ask me. And the answer is no. Well, it's probably no.
I remember that conversation.
But of course I was going to listen to what you had to say. And I already was thinking about that. So when you approached me with that, and I knew that there was a need, so I started thinking and praying about what that could look like. And I am still a little hesitant. I don't think that I'm called to children's ministry to do that full time. I know that I'm called to mentor. And I would love to see myself in women's ministry later on down the road. And I love the practice that I'm getting with GCBR right now, and forming the relationship with my girls and getting to know them and mentor them and help them, and God teaching me through that. And I also know that being a part of the children's ministry team will help prepare me for later ministry, because I'm going to understand what it looks like to be on church staff and how it looks like to work together and be on that team. And I do really enjoy teaching, and I've enjoyed getting more involved in the children's ministry. And I also know that it's not something that I would want to commit to long term, especially because I'm also interested in potentially moving up to Lakeland and being a part of that team as well. And so my hope is that while I'm in children's ministry, that I will give it everything that I have. For God to equip me to be doing that, to be working on the team here, and also helping the next person who comes after me to transition into that and help equip them to do that as well.
Yeah. And one of the things that we've kind of, a word we've thrown out through this entire discussion has been the word team. And that's maybe a little bit of a buzzword, but I think it's also one we've chosen specifically because we want to take a more team approach to ministry, because we've seen that the challenge of one person being solely responsible is that there's a lot riding on that individual being there. And the thing we know about, especially a church of our size, where we don't have a big budget and can't hire multiple staff people for a children's department, right? I mean, it's not something that's a career choice long term to be the half-time, part-time director of children's ministry at Grace Church of Sebring. So to overcome that hurdle that we have, just as a smaller church, and also a church that has a lot of commitments from a missions perspective with Lakeland and with Ocala, we've kind of made a choice to think about this transition more in a team mindset. Whereas when you took on the role, it was really, Allie had led it for years, and she kind of just handed over a mantle, and she was really the sole leader responsible for that. So can you just real briefly, because we only have a few minutes left, walk me through why we've done that and what that team is starting to look like? Because Katrina is just a part of that, is what I'm hearing from you guys, and how you're having these conversations.
So the big thing that, like you said, is that we've seen that when it is a single head leader taking responsibility and control of all aspects, you limit a couple things. You limit energy, you limit the amount of time that they can hold the position before reaching a point of burnout, but you also limit the amount of creativity and innovation that you can have when you just limit it to one brain. And our team of volunteers has been really, really helpful throughout the years as I've taken the role to be supportive and to offer extra times to volunteer and to give ideas. But from a leadership standpoint, it can often feel a little bit like standing alone. And so sort of taking the imagery from the Moses story where he stands on the mountain and Aaron and Joshua hold up his arms, just knowing that a group of people can remain strong much longer and can accomplish so much more than a single person. We are moving towards a multi-leader setting for the kids ministry. So what Katrina's role is going to be is she's going to fulfill the Sunday morning needs. Every single Sunday, there needs to be someone to open the doors, to be there to answer questions. And in a situation where there's an emergency or a medical problem or even just a concern from a parent, there needs to be a point person who the ministry team can just say, well, I don't know the answer, but you need to speak to Katrina or to Carrie. And so for years it's been something that the director has done. It's just the director of children's ministry is the point person every single Sunday, which can become quite exhausting after a while to not be able to have, a Sunday where you can just go and worship and be in your body without also continuously being needed to do other things. And so Katrina's role is going to be caring for the Sunday mornings, making sure that everything that happens from starting at 8, our service starts at 9, but we start kids ministry prep at 8 o'clock. So from 8 to 1 every Sunday, there needs to be somebody that's available to work with the team and to supply answers to questions and to make judgment calls in the moment. And so that's where her role is going to pretty much settle into. But we're also looking for somebody with really great organizational skills to work as the coordinator of our volunteers. We have 20 plus people who serve on a weekly basis in our ministry, and we need somebody to do scheduling. We need somebody to be in charge of, when someone comes up sick on a Thursday afternoon and knows they won't make it on a Sunday, somebody has to take that need and fill it. And so instead of that being on Katrina, that's going to be a separate role. They're going to make the schedules up. They're going to make sure that the teachers know what they're teaching. They're going to make sure that if they need a call out or they need extra help, they go to that person first.
I have one more thing for you, Katrina, because you said something that kind of caught my ear, and it's something I knew about you, but I never heard you say it that way. And when you said that I don't feel called to children's ministry, right? So for some people that might kind of stick out as a negative or something. Well, if she's not called to children's ministry, why is she getting involved in children's ministry? But I actually think that this is a critical thing for us to talk about, right? Because even when we express the need for volunteers, right? This is something that you hear in conversation a lot, right? I don't feel called to children's ministry. So what would you say as somebody who understands that like this isn't like a long-term thing for me? You see this as kind of a step along your journey in a role that you're going to fulfill for a time, not necessarily like your permanent undying passion. You know what I'm saying? How would you talk and kind of counsel along a person who knows God's calling them to do something in kids ministry, but has that sense of kind of inadequacy, that this isn't their big passion and that it isn't their like their singular
right.
driving force, that I just need to invest in kids? How do you do something with passion and with obedience to Christ when it isn't that thing? And would you encourage somebody to think about that in a different way?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. It's something that was really heavily, I feel like it was a heavy burden on me. Even this week, I was worried about, should I be stepping into something that I'm not completely sure about at the time. And so what I would say is, first of all, would be pray about it. Because and that's what I did. I was saying, like, God, I'm not sure what's going to happen with this. And the peace and the response that I feel like I got from God was, this is something that, it might not be for the rest of your life, but while you're in it, I have very important things that I want to teach you, and for you to learn both in ministry, working with children, like from my future family, of just having practice of how to deal with them, how to teach them, how to work with families in the church, and how to minister where I am at with the skills that I have now, and I feel like it just comes down to what God wants to teach me in this moment. And for me to let God do that, and for me to serve, because I know that God has done amazing things for me. I want to continue to be a part of that and give back where I am. And for me right now, that looks like being a part of the kids ministry team. So I would encourage other people who are not quite sure about their larger calling or the big passion on their life to start praying about how they can help support our church, because we do need help. We need someone else to fill the other role that Carrie was talking about, and we do need other people to help teach, especially in the elementary part of the children's ministry, and we can't do it on our own. So that would be my answer. Just pray about how God might use you and how God might teach you in children's ministry, even that if that's not the huge calling on your life, because we do need other people to serve.
I think as young leaders, and to some regard, wherever you're at in life, you're a leader. You're a leader of somebody. I think when we are put in a situation of leadership, we tend to get concerned and anxious that we don't have what it takes to do it, right? That people are going to find out that we're phonies, that we're faking it or whatever, right? And I think one of the challenges, and one of the things that God's like taught me, and is clearly teaching you, is that we serve and we lead because we need to grow, right?
The leader always learns the most.
Don't think that, I'm just not ready. I'm not ready to serve. I'm not ready to lead. That feeling of inadequacy is good and it's natural, but that should drive us to serve, because it's in that leadership capacity that we're developed.
And you learn to rely on God.
For sure. So I think that is really cool how God has worked that out in your life, and I'm excited to see I hope that this is just the beginning of conversations that we have about kids ministry, and maybe sometime in the future we'll have to sit down with some other people as well to talk about just how God's moving and what He's doing in that section of the church.